Okay, so for your insect collection, there are several different techniques that you can try to capture your insects. One of them is going to be to come to an aquatic location. So Justin has an aquatic D-net right now that you should have available to you. This is great, especially if you're collecting in the wintertime when everything else is frozen. The things that are in the water will still be active. So this is a perfect spot. So even though we're in the middle of summer right now, if you're taking this course during the winter, water is a great place to collect insects. So he's just going to go to the vegetation. He's going to do some sweeping underneath some of that aquatic vegetation. He'll lift it up and then put it into a pan. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. If we take a look, at first you might not see anything except for, in this case, a lot of duckweed. But if you look very carefully, you will start to notice that things are going to start moving. So the longer you leave things sitting here, the more things you start to see come to life. A lot of the things that you're going to find in the water are also immature. So as they develop, they get larger and larger. So remember that the smaller ones you can still get DNA from, but and they're actually probably going to be easier to work with ultimately. So a lot of times you can just go through it with your hands to see if you can find anything that's moving and large, but sometimes it's easier to take that material and just transfer it directly into the water, because then at that point these are aquatic organisms and they will start swimming once they get into that water. With this technique, this one, we only have a couple of them. I know it can be hard to get a hold of them, but it is actually one of the funner tools to use to collect insects, and it's very effective. So with this one, you have one hand that's carrying a stick, and the other one that's carrying this sheet. And the idea is to beat the insects out of the tree. Now this one, if you don't like spiders, you're also going to be beating spiders out of the tree, but it is very effective. So Justin's just hitting the branches, knocking things that might be on the bark and on the leaves onto the white sheet. They should stand out nicely against this white with that nice contrast. So if we take a look at what we get, again, you're going to look for movement. So at this point, you'll automatically see that you've got little tiny things crawling around. Remember, you only need one small insect. There's some ants there, but you could just pop those right into a vial. And if you look very, very closely, you will see those spiders. Now, we're not going to be collecting spiders, but you will see little tiny spiders, but there's also some very tiny insects that you can collect that could be very, very interesting. Things that, because they're small, they're not commonly collected. So if you want, go ahead and target some of these smaller organisms and put those into the vial. Okay, so with this technique, this is using a sweep net, and it's just like it describes. So really the best way to collect is to sweep the net back and forth across any kind of tall grass, and you can do this anywhere on campus. Where pretty much we have any kind of vegetation that you could just walk through back and forth. And what you'll be amazed by are the number of insects that wind up being trapped at the bottom. Now there could be some potential stinging insects like wasps and bees. So some students, they don't want to deal with that. So one of the things that you can do is to take one of your jars and you can insert it inside, turn it inside out, and you might not get everything, but you'll definitely get an assortment, a good assortment of insects. So we're just going to empty it out on the inside, take the lid inside your net, and trap whatever you have in here. So you can definitely see lots of movement. And at that point, if you wanted to, you can just pop this whole thing into the freezer for maybe 15, 30 minutes, and whatever's in there is going to die by the freezing process. You don't have to use any harsh chemicals. You can just freeze them and they'll be dead by the time you pull them out. So you've got flies, you should have grasshoppers. What is that? Oh yeah, one of the true bugs here, full of grass.
Seeds,
yeah. So if you are worried about getting stung, it's one of the easier ways of being able to capture them without coming in contact with a bee or wasp. But if you are allergic to bee or wasps, you want to make sure that you alert your instructor, let them know before you head out into the field. So this is also, you don't have to use it just in the tall grass. If you take a look at just above Justin's head, you'll see lots of dragonflies, but there also might be butterflies, damselflies, moths, things like that. And this is also a good way to collect those. So if you happen to see something buzzing around, flying around, that's just out of your hand's reach, you can grab them directly out of the sky. So Justin's caught a dragonfly. So at this point, dragonflies will bite. But really, they're not going to give you any kind of painful sting or anything. But still, if you'd rather transfer them, you can again use the container and put it directly into the container. And then make sure that you put the lid on underneath. And so at this point, we've caught a dragonfly. Another great place to look for insects is in the ground. So especially underneath the logs or in mulch is a great place, because especially on a dry day when it's very, very hot, a lot of insects will go into areas where there's some moisture, and under a log is a perfect place for that. So if we take a look, there are some safety precautions, because there could be things like snakes that might be underneath a log. So you want to make sure that when you are rolling over a log, you don't grab before you look. So you don't put your fingers in a place that a snake might be resting. So we're just going to, in this case, just turn the log over, and immediately you'll see lots of things moving around. So these are completely harmless, so I can use my hands, or you could use your forceps. We've got lots of termites that are feeding off the log. Also some grubs and things like that, earwigs. Lots of little things that you can collect. You can also break open a log if you are feeling adventurous. Break open a log or peel back the bark, where lots of things will be hiding underneath. One other safety issue, especially with a larger log that might have some sort of snake underneath it, is, again, you don't put your fingers underneath the log. And one other thing is you probably want to roll it, especially for these larger logs, roll it so that it's going to be opening up the log away from you. So you roll the log towards you. That way if there is a snake, a snake's going to be more scared of you than you are of it. And it's going to try to go that direction, get away from you. So you don't want to roll it the other way, because if there is a snake, it might run out towards you. All right, so as soon as we roll it away, you'll see that this has lots of decomposing matter, where lots of insects are probably hiding. You just have to kind of root them through. Look for movement. You can always take this material and transfer it over to a pan and look for movement. So you want to just let it sit for a little bit, and then things will start to crawl once you let things sit. And you will start seeing things move around once you let things sit. So sometimes once you put them into the pan, it doesn't move right away, but then they will come to life, and at that point you'll find them. So don't get discouraged if you put something into a jar or a container and you don't see anything, because a lot of times it just takes some patience. One last thing is, remember that especially when we're looking at 1107, we're talking about 400 to 700 students a year taking this class, and so if everybody is disturbing these habitats, very quickly campus community of insects are going to be depleted. So make sure that you restore the community to what it was. So what do I mean by that is, see how this log is now open? This is home to lots of insects and all kinds of creatures. Make sure to put it back how you found it. That way we can encourage insects for the next semester of students.